So if you were to bring the black share of wealth at least to the black share of the population, it would require an additional at least $10 trillion.
But if we were paid those unskilled wages at a 6% interest rate, we would have $6.2 quadrillion that we would be owed today.
Reparations is the key. The story have black folks come and talk about what kind of hell they live and have people have to listen. Reparations will set us free.
In the news, sad story, a sad occasion. Buffalo mass shooting victims include beloved guard, church deacon, and mother of former fire commissioner. This is just surreal. The 10 victims of the mass shooting at a Buffalo, New York supermarket include a church deacon, a beloved security guard, and the mother of a retired fire commissioner. The victims represented a cross-section of life in a predominantly black neighborhood. They were gunned down by an 18-year-old white man who authorities say showed up at the store with the express purpose of killing black people. Governor Kathy Hochul called it an act of white supremacy terrorism. 3 other people were wounded in the attack. All but one of the people killed was over 50, according to police. Zaire Goodman, 20, of Buffalo, was treated and released from the hospital. Jennifer Warrington, 50, of Tonawanda, New York, was treated and released from the hospital. Christopher Braden, 55, of Lackawanna, New York, had non-life-threatening injuries. Roberta A. Drury, 32, of Buffalo. Marcus D. Morrison, 52, of Buffalo. Andre McNeil, 53, of Auburn, New York. Aaron Salter, 55, of Lockport, New York. Geraldine Talley, 62, of Buffalo. Celestine Cheney, 65, of Buffalo. Keyword Patterson, 67, of Buffalo. Catherine Macy, 72, of Buffalo. Pearl Young, 77, of Buffalo. And Ruth Whitfield, 86, of Buffalo. May they rest in peace. Ashe.
Ashe to our elders. A lot of them were elders. I'm just out there, the grocery store, trying to pick up a few groceries. So this guy is a coward to go, massacre a bunch of elderly people. It's just sickening. And I have a little video just of one of the 911 calls that was coming out during the tragedy.
Inside of the Tops Market, I believe you were an assistant manager there. Can you walk us through what you saw this afternoon?
I didn't really see much at all. I just heard the gunshots and just dropped down to the ground and just waited for him to stop. And he just wouldn't stop. So I tried to call 911 and I was whispering because I could hear him close by. And when I whispered on the phone to 911, the dispatcher would start yelling at me saying, "Why are you whispering? You don't have to whisper." And I'm trying to tell her, like, "Ma'am, he's in the store, he's shooting, as an active shooter. I'm scared for my life." And she said something crazy to me and then she hung up in my face. And I had to call my boyfriend and tell him to call 911.
Well, that is certainly unfortunate, Letitia.
Man, that operator should be fired immediately.
I'm at a loss of words of what to say. I mean, a trained operator should know that people are calling 911 because they're in, vulnerable situations. To tell somebody stop whispering, it doesn't even make any sense. She definitely needs to lose her job.
Yeah.
All right. So here's an article kind of maybe giving some theory into what was behind this hate-fueled terrorist attack. The white supremacist strategy to destroy America. The weekend's mass shooting in Buffalo, New York was not merely a random act of hate. It was a product of violent strategy formulated to obscure neo-Nazi magazines and disseminate it on the internet's darkest corners that aims to bring about the destruction of American society. This idea is called accelerationism. It's a new term to me. And violent white supremacists like the Buffalo shooter see it as their best chance to stop the so-called Great Replacement. The notion that the West white population is being replaced with non-whites, a deliberate demographic shift often blamed on Jewish cabals. Accelerationists believe that race and ethnicity create inherent divisions within Western societies which individual acts of violence can inflame. The idea is to accelerate the crack-up of Western governments and bring on race wars that culminate in white victory. In a 180-page document, the Buffalo shooter, who per law enforcement targeted Black people directly, credits his actions to accelerationist thinking. In a section titled Destabilization and Accelerationism Tactics for Victory, he claims that stability and comfort are the enemies of revolutionary change. Therefore, we must destabilize and discomfort societies wherever possible. These passages are directly copied from writing in the 2019 Christchurch shooter in New Zealand, whose idea previously influenced American mass shooters in Poway, California, and El Paso, Texas. Militant neo-Nazi groups like Atomwaffen and the Base have built their ideology around accelerationism. Some scholars of the far right have even identified accelerationist thinking among the January 6 rioters.
Yeah, this is exactly why there needs to be an anti-black protection bill, or a black, protection bill like they have for the Asian community.
Definitely. That should be an executive order. They should have had that at the ready. It should have already been signed, and the ink should be drying on that by now after what happened this past weekend.
Yeah, all this white supremacy is anti-American. These people need to be removed from America. Because this is not progress. This isn't American progress. This is anti-American.
It's anti-American for sure. And this is the stuff that they're talking about all day long. Had you ever heard this term before? Accelerationist and accelerationism and...
Yeah, accelerationism. No, this is the first time I've actually, heard this. I really don't get involved in those deep, dark depth corners of the dark web with these white supremacists. So yeah, this is the first time I've actually heard the term.
Well, stay aware, family. Stay aware.
All right. Ukraine crisis. Can Africa replace Russian gas supplies to Europe? Russia's suspension of deliveries to Poland and Bulgaria over their refusal to pay in rubles, the Russian secure currency, was a stark reminder of the threat facing the Eurozone. Russia has the largest natural gas reserves in the world and is the largest exporter, accounting for around 40% of Europe's imports. The EU wants to cut supplies by 2/3 by the end of the year and become independent of all its fossil fuels by 2030. However, energy economist Carol Nackel says that with the combined exports of America's big players in the industry, Algeria, Egypt, and Nigeria, amounting to less than half of what Russia supplies to Europe, they are unlikely at the moment to compensate for any losses in Russia's supplies. The good news is there will be greater interest in countries that already have the resources to replace Russian gas, and Africa is in a very good position. We're going to see more investment, she says. However, this will take time because of various logistical issues in the continent's major exporters. Algeria is well positioned to benefit from the EU's shift in energy policy. The North African country is the region's biggest natural gas exporter and currently enjoys well-developed gas connectivity infrastructure with Europe. So it looks like some of the natural gas exports from Africa in 2020, Algeria is the largest, Nigeria second, Egypt, Libya, Equatorial Guinea, Angola, and then it looks like some others have actually contributed to the gas exports.
So that could possibly mean a boon in this industry for African continent.
Possibly.
Well, let's hope it, trickles down to the people. Somalia President Biden reverses Trump's withdrawal of U.S. troops. U.S. officials say President Biden has approved the redeployment of U.S. troops to Somalia, reversing a decision by his predecessor, Donald Trump. The deployment was requested by the Pentagon to support the fight against militant group al-Shabaab. President Trump withdrew about 700 U.S. troops from Somalia in 2020. The move to reestablish a military presence in the East African country comes as long overdue elections delivered a new president. Hassan Sheikh Mohammed, a former peace activist, promised to work closely with international partners as he took office on Monday. Somalia has suffered from decades of chronic insecurity, and the Islamic militants who once controlled the country still hold large swaths of it and continue to collect taxes in places. Many of the country expressed deep concern when former President Donald Trump ordered the withdrawal of U.S. troops who had long been relied on, as well as more than 19,000 peacekeepers from African Union nations. This time around, fewer than 500 U.S. troops will be deployed, which has been described as repositioning of forces already in theater who have traveled in and out of Somalia on an episodic basis by U.S. National Security spokeswoman Adrienne Watson. Her statement appeared critical of Trump's administration, calling its decision to withdraw troops precipitous. Al-Shabaab militants regularly carry out attacks in the capital of Mogadishu, which they stepped up in the run-up to May's election in hope of derailing it. Somalia faces other formidable challenges, including a drought that has left millions in urgent need of aid. So have we heard calls from Somalia that they even want this assistance or want this help? Or is Biden just talking, making decisions?
Great question. Don't know.
Yeah, America is really not in any position to be offering any kind of humanitarian advice to anybody.
Workers facing lunchflation as they return to their offices. I know this story is about 2 months old, but I think it's definitely relevant since people are actually going back into the offices. Square on Wednesday, March 23rd, released data that shows workers who are returning to the offices after 2 years at home because of the COVID-19 pandemic will be placed with what's being called lunchflation, as their midday meals will cost more than when they last visited their favorite joints. Lunch item costs are rising faster than the average costs across all other items because restaurants are dealing with rising costs related to labor, ingredients, and more, according to the Square data as of March 1st. The average price of wraps is up 18% year over year, for example, while sandwiches have been an increased cost of 14%. Tacos will cost consumers an extra 12%, while salads cost 11% more than they did 2 years ago. Consumers will be charged 8% more for burgers and 5% more for their favorite soup. The average cost across all items has jumped 7% year over year, the Square data shows. Many restaurants have added online ordering, self-serve ordering through QR codes, and local and flat rate delivery through third-party partners to cut back on some of the increases to the costs associated with their businesses. Restaurants have been among the hardest hit businesses over the past few years, and now they're facing rising costs across all parts of their businesses due to labor shortages and supply chain constraints, said Byron Solar, head of restaurants at Square, in the company press release. While technology offers many solutions, businesses from and relationships with the customer continue to be key to restaurant survival. In addition to being upfront and honest about why prices have changed, restaurants can lean on inventory management software to combat supply chain woes, he said.
So you're basically going to be paying to go to work. You're paying increased gas prices. If you want to go out to lunch, that's going to cost you an arm and a leg. So, I see why people are pushing back about going back into the office. It's expensive to go to work.
I mean, even when you talk about businesses, though, right? You can go to the next slide. Like, even when you talk about businesses, I mean, they're still paying for overhead, you know?
Yeah, and these businesses, if you've been sitting in on any of these, city business PBID meetings out here in Sacramento, they're the ones that are pushing to get people back into the office so that they can come and patronize their businesses. They miss that lunch traffic, so they're the ones really driving people back into the office for their own self-serving benefits.
All right.
FDA reaches deal with Abbott to reopen baby formula factory. How long until it's back on shelves? On Monday evening, baby formula producer Abbott announced it had reached a deal with Food and Drug Administration, laying out a path to reopen a factory in Sturgis, Michigan, that shut down amid recalls earlier this year, contributing to the current shortage. In a statement, the company confirmed that it had entered into a consent decree with the FDA in which the agency and company agree on the benchmarks required to resume production and ensure the facility meets safety guidelines. FDA officials said late Monday that if a court approves the agreement, the Michigan site could restart in 2 weeks. The site would initially produce specialty metabolic formulas, Elicare and Alimtum, followed by Similac and eventually other formulas. Food and Drug officials said, "Our number one priority is getting infants and families the high equity formulas they need, and this is a major step toward reopening our Sturgis facility so we can ease the nationwide formula shortage. We look forward to working with FDA to quickly and safely reopen the facility," said Chairman and CEO Robert B. Ford. "We know millions of parents and caregivers depend on us, and we're deeply sorry that our voluntary recall worsened the nationwide formula shortage. We will work hard to re-earn the trust that moms, dads, and caregivers have placed in our formulas for more than 50 years."
Wow, it's a shame. But, hopefully they'll be able to, provide the country with more baby formula.
Definitely, especially since they are, wanting to ban abortion. So they're forcing people to have babies, and then there's no food to feed the babies. But there's always a silver liner. There has been more discussion of people going back to producing and making their own baby formula. So that should be interesting. People are sharing ingredients for that. So maybe that's another avenue. People just need to get back to self-sufficiency.
Yep. And we talked about the going back to work, and with women going back to work now and needing baby formula, boy, cost of living is just nuts.
It's just a perfect storm.
Revealed 93% of districts in major U.S. cities unaffordable to Black residents. In most metro zip codes, majority of Black local renters don't earn enough to afford median rents, National Equity Atlas found. More than 90% of neighborhoods in America's major cities were unaffordable to the majority of local Black residents at the start of the pandemic, according to a new study on the worsening housing crisis in urban regions across the U.S. The National Equity Atlas, a research initiative focused on racial and economic equity, compared rents and wages in the 100 most populous American metropolitan regions in 2019 and examined whether the majority of households of different racial groups made enough income to afford median market rents in their neighborhoods. Long-standing patterns of racial segregations are deepening, said Rashida Phillips, co-author of the report and director of housing at PolicyLink, a research organization that co-produces the National Equity Atlas with the USC Equity Research Institute. Low-income Black and brown households are being pushed out of their neighborhoods and confined to the outskirts of what are otherwise prosperous cities. The crisis was particularly acute in California, which has become some of the least affordable housing in the nation, and a humanitarian homeless disaster. Absolutely. Facts 100. I know a lot of Black folks got pushed out in LA, in the city. From my understanding, I could be wrong, but I think a lot of, Black folks ended up moving out to like places like Victorville and some other places like Lancaster and Palmdale, which basically are outskirts of Los Angeles. Like Lancaster, I think it takes like an hour or something, and that's without traffic to get to Los Angeles. So if you're talking about with traffic, you're probably looking at about a 2-hour commute.
Yeah, so just more ways to keep the poor poor. I mean, if you're driving 2 hours, traffic, commute, gas is through the roof. They want you to go back to work in the cities. I mean, just being pushed out. They say when you see the dog walkers and the bicyclists, get on high alert, because that means gentrification is happening in your neighborhood.
To a neighborhood coming to you.
Near you. Facts. California sees record $97.5 billion surplus driven by the rich. Bloomberg. California Governor Gavin Newsom said Friday that his state has a record $97.5 billion operating surplus, as high tax rates on its wealthiest residents mean he has more cash to fund liberal policy priorities such as education and health care. The surplus is bigger than the entire 2020 spending of any other state except New York and Texas. Of that windfall, lawmakers can tap $49.2 billion for any purpose. That figure surpasses the staggering $38 billion that they had at their disposal during the previous budget season, then considered the biggest. The surplus is simply without precedent, Newsom, a first-term Democrat up for re-election this year, said as he unveiled a $227.4 billion budget for the next fiscal year beginning in July. It's a sign of how well a number of people are doing in this economy, Newsom said. I'm proud of California's progressive tax system, and we're the beneficiaries of that. Such liberal priorities such as education, healthcare, they left reparations off that sentence there. Definitely needs to be a priority with this surplus budget, and us having the first reparations task force in the nation.
Yep. Newsom announces 8.1 billion. That's 8.1 billion with
That's
a B.
18.1
Did I say 8?
billion.
Thank you for the correction. 18.1 billion. See, that's why you have partners, right? They got your back.
I got your back.
18.1 billion inflation relief package. Governor Gavin Newsom has proposed an 18.1 billion inflation relief package that would send rebate checks to vehicle owners and pause the diesel sales tax. Newsom's proposal includes $11.5 billion for tax refunds to help address inflation. Governor Newsom proposed getting $400 checks to every eligible registered vehicle owner, capped at 2 checks per individual. $2.7 billion for emergency rental assistance. Governor Newsom is proposing significant state funds for qualified low-income tenants who requested rental assistance before March 31st. $1.4 billion to help Californians pay past due utility bills. $1.2 billion for electricity bills and $200 million for water bills. $933 million for hospital and nursing home staff, providing up to $1,500 to hospital and skilled nursing facility workers who have been delivering care during the COVID-19 pandemic. $750 million for free public transit. Governor Newsom is proposing incentive grants to provide 3 months of free public transportation for communities throughout the state. $304 million to make health coverage more affordable for middle-class families. This extends health insurance premium assistance under Covered California for families of 4 earning up to $166,500 annually, upwards of 700,000 Californians. $439 million to pause the diesel sales tax. Governor Newsom is proposing a 12-month pause in the sales tax rate for diesel fuel that would provide upwards of $439 million in relief. $157 million to waive child care fees for low-income families. The governor's office says this would benefit 40,000 low-income California families with savings of up to $595 per month. California Democrats reported the state budget surplus had reached $68 billion in April.
$68 billion in April. Here we are in May, and they're reporting a $97.5 billion surplus. So they're getting money from somewhere. But again, with these programs, I'm always skeptical when I see them. It seems like there's so much red tape with a lot of these programs. I mean, I applied for mortgage assistance from one of these government-funded programs back in January, and it is still, they say under review. That actually reminds me, as soon as we finish up here, I'm going to give them a call and let them know. All right, so we do have some good news here. Always try to end on a positive note. Got some encouraging news last week, and this is a Twitter post from CJEC official, and that is the Coalition for a Just and Equitable California, the group that's been working on reparations out here in California. Breaking: California will disaggregate data for its Black population by ancestry lineage, starting with the state's 2.5 million plus employees. Thank you, CJEC advocates and supporters, for working so hard to make this happen. At Chris Holden, Newz, at Gavin Newsom for addressing disaggregation to the California budget. So that's a celebratory text. Let's see what the copy says here. State workforce demographic data collection. Cal HR will work with the state controller to establish new demographic categories for the collection of data pertaining to the ancestry or ethnic origin of African American employees. The collection of this data continues Cal HR's duties to maintain statistical information necessary for the evaluation of equal employment opportunity and upward mobility within state civil service. Congratulations to CJEC and the state of California for being the first to disaggregate this kind of data by lineage for Black people. It's really exciting, huh?
Yeah, shout out to the CJEC advocacy organization, and shout out to any of the allies and all the other advocates. Shout out to Gavin Newsom and obviously Chris Holden, who is definitely is definitely pushing the bill. He's also the author of AB 1604 as well. So, shout out to everybody's hard work on this historic moment. Another historic moment in California.
Congratulations, family. We keep moving forward, and that is in the news.